All right. Hey, what's up, Code Keepers? We have something special for you today. So welcome to another great episode of Get On Code. All right. Welcome to Get On Code, the Fly Guy Show, which is a series of melanated conversations focused on empowerment, health, wealth, and knowledge of self.
People think in binary choices because they are conditioned to.
And on the wall was a picture of a wolf and a lion. I think the wolf was the Democratic Party, the lion was the Republicans.
But the drug trade and all these illegal stuff that people do, that's still economics. It's just that they couldn't do it in a traditional system.
We're talking about melanated wealth.
So we can build wealth, but we just, for some reason, don't seem to be able to transfer it.
You had a great experience. Fine. That means nothing.
What were you told as a child about education? You had to be how many times better?
Every impression without an expression becomes depression.
That's right, Code Keepers. It's time to get on code, and we're back today with a great book and the author of this great book. The book is Paper Doll Lina, and I tell you, so the book came into.
If you're in the building, can you please stop down to the main office real quick to see me? Once again, Charmaine Lee, Susan Ransford, and Penny Williams. If you are in the building, can you please come down to the main office? Thank you.
Okay, it happens.
It happens. So the book came in the mail.
Yeah.
And as soon as I opened it, my wife said, "Hey, what's that about?" And so I told her a little bit of the synopsis, and she took it from me. And she read it in about 3 days.
Wow.
And she wouldn't stop talking about it. Hey, true believers, this really is a great book. And the great thing is, if you're a fan, if you're a code keeper, you know that we focus on improving the experience that we have here in the world. And one of the areas that we're really focused on is improving the experience of women, in particular abuse upon women and women who are in abusive situations. So today, I implore you, hey, pick up the book, enjoy it, and share it with those people who can truly benefit from it. And speaking of the book, we have the beautiful author with us today. And it's, kind of reminds me of a Prince song. In the song, he says, "I was dreaming when I wrote this, so sue me if I go too fast," something like that.
Oh, come on, so sue me if I go too fast. You can't just say the word, come on.
Okay, that part. So You had a dream the weekend of Charlottesville. So what was happening, and I just want to kind of lay a foundation, because, the foundation will be obvious. Why did Charlottesville bother you so much that you had to find a way to distract yourself?
Wow. It was just one of those moments where you just look on TV and you see the world is not what you thought it was. I thought we were further along than having literal Nazis in the streets with tiki torches. I just needed that moment to just sort of step away from the TV because I couldn't take it. I couldn't understand how that was happening in 2017. This is 2017, not like 1959. We weren't supposed to be facing something like that. That's how I felt. My children weren't supposed to be experiencing something like that. And I could not possibly understand it. I couldn't grasp it. And I need to kind of grasp my reality sometimes. So yeah, I had to just unplug from the world. I ended up having a dream the night after. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm just going to take the time to write what I need to write. And I ended up banging out the book in about 9 weeks. I just completely purged it from my system and did not quite realize what it was going to be about afterwards.
Intriguing. So it's kind of interesting how a challenging, a difficult, an abusive situation that was happening in front of our very eyes allowed you to address a similar situation through your book and also through your family as well. So
yeah.
So let's talk about that. Tell us about that. How are you connected with this book?
Oh boy. Well, like I said, I wrote Paper Doll Lina in about 9 weeks for the first draft, which, was a hot mess because first drafts are a hot mess. I didn't quite realize the parallels to my own personal life as far as abuse is concerned until I was in revisions. And throughout the multiple rounds of revisions, I slowly began to see some serious parallels that were concerning me. And it made me stop and realize that, hey, this is not a normal marriage. This has never been a normal marriage. I never had the power to say no. And I know that sounds really simplistic, but at the end of the day, that's what abuse is. An abuser takes your power away and does not allow you to say no. You have to go along and you have to conform, which is why it's so important that people maintain their self, in a relationship, as opposed to just conforming to what your partner wants you to be.
That's an interesting point. So how can somebody identify, if they're in a bad, abusive, a toxic, use a negative term, relationship? How can somebody identify that?
Oh boy. The best thing that I can ever say is, how does that person make you feel about yourself? Do you like yourself when you're around that person? Do you have to be someone completely different when you're around that person? If you feel like you have to change yourself in order to please that person or in order to fit into their life, that is a red flag that you really need to analyze.
For some of us, what you just described, we're looking at our employer and saying, I have to act different at work.
Hey, there are toxic relationships at work. I mean, like, seriously. And you can't cede your power. You at the end of the day, you have to maintain your sense of self. And that goes beyond all kinds of relationships, whether it's intimate partner relationships, whether it's work relationships, whether it's church relationships, because there's some churches you go to and you can't tell them, no, you're not going to work on Sunday. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something that you really have to focus on. And within any kind of relationship that you have, whether romantic or, otherwise, there's an aspect of power and control that you have to maintain, that balance of power and control between yourself and that person, to where you're not giving them your power and control. They're not giving you their power and control. It's a fine kind of balance.
Well, what's really intriguing to me is that in the midst and in the process of being creative and having that creative outlet, you found your voice. You finally realized that your situation wasn't ideal. And I think it's intriguing because, I've often been told that your talents are given to you to help you improve your lot in life. And you took your talent and it helped you realize your situation was bad, but now you're improving the lot of other women primarily. We realize that, all genders get abused, but, primarily it's women.
It is.
So what are some tips that a person who's in an abusive, toxic relationship what are some things they can start doing? What are some tips they can use almost immediately?
Wow. The first thing I would say is isolation happens in abuse. Abuse is allowed to happen because of silence, right? And all too often, the silence happens because you become isolated from your friends and family. Your spouse wants to move to another state, or your spouse doesn't quite like that friend for one reason or another, or they don't like that family member for one reason or another, or they need more time with you and you spend too much time with these people, when you volunteer, when you do XYZ, or even, I don't want you to go to work because I want you at home with the kids or whatever. That's just a factor. I mean, we see that in the book. Lina lives a very isolated life. unfortunately. And it isn't until she reconnects with a friend of hers after 5 years of not talking to her best friend, she by chance reconnects with her. And, that just gives her so much more community. That gives her so much more sense of support. And she's able to take some steps that she needs to take to consider leaving her abusive spouse. And I would definitely tell people who are in abusive situations, I know you're isolated. I get it. Been there, done that. I have the shirt. Make the connections with your friends and family. Reconnect with them. They love you. You're never going to be a burden. Even if it's been 10 years, they're waiting for you to call them.
You said they're waiting for you to call them. And
yeah.
In your book, Paper Doll Lina, it's obvious she gets a new relationship. She teams up with a best friend she hadn't seen in a while, or really good friend she hasn't seen in a while. Were you able in your personal life to team up, to find a support system that helped you to ultimately make a different experience?
Yeah, I too was isolated. We ended up moving from a city that I was really active in, to a city that I knew nobody. Little by little, my calls with my family got annoying. The friends that I made were like one reason or another. My husband did not like them, my husband at the time. But I will say this, abuse escalates. What may start as manipulating and gaslighting will always escalate to physical violence. And that's what happened in my case, after so many years. It wasn't until I had to take out a protective order in 2018 that I was able to get out of my abusive marriage. And fortunately, I had a really great friend who would not take no for an answer when it came to isolating, when it came to me not calling her back, when it came to me, trying to sort of sever the relationship and sort of keep my husband happy at the same time. She was just one of those friends who was like, look, no, we're friends. I'm going to be your sister, whether you want me to be your sister or not. We're here. I am here for you. And, when she heard what happened on that fateful day, she was like, let's go. You're taking out a protective order. Let's go. Enough is enough. And she held my hand through the whole thing. She watched my kids. She helped me pick them up from school. She would come in my room when I was, depressed afterwards and just kind of sit there with me and just, hey, it gets better. It'll get better, and we need people in our lives like that. And Lina's so fortunate to have Nancy in her life like that. And I was fortunate personally to have someone like that in our lives, in my life.
Beautiful. I'm so glad that they were there as well. That helped us get to this point where you're going to help many thousands, millions of women, leave an abusive relationship and hopefully into a more healthy, non-toxic relationship, as they read this great book, Paper Doll Lina. What are some other things that the abused or the pre-abused can do if they're feeling isolated? You said reaching out with family and, other friends, but what are some other things they can do if they're starting to feel isolated in particular?
Join a community group. I know there's COVID going on. I totally get it. I'm so over COVID, just like everyone else. But get vaccinated, wear a mask and go out and see how you can participate within your community, whether that's volunteering, whether that's, working at the school, if your kids are in school, every single library needs more help. It's getting out there and getting around people in any kind of way that you can, in a safe sort of way because of COVID right now, or even reconnecting online. We have the option of Zoom calls and we have the option of FaceTime and all this wonderful technology at our fingertips. So, even if you can text someone that you haven't texted in a while, or go on Facebook and Facebook friend that person that you had to cut off because of your spouse, there's ways that you can figure out how to make those connections that you will ultimately need.
That's one thing I really liked about the book. You had some strategies, and get some conceptual things that a person who's being abused could really take and use to improve their life. And also, anybody who's reading this might start identifying, hey, my cousin's going through this, my parents going through this, my child is going through this, my friend's going through this. So what are some of the warning signs that says that a person is being forced into isolation? Because you stated that, isolation is really like the starting point. It was one of the starting points, rather. So what are some of the signs that a person is being forced into isolation?
A sign of being forced into isolation. Let's see. If your partner doesn't really care for you hanging out with certain people for no reason at all, like if they're good people and they're not like being a hot mess or whatever, and he just doesn't like, or she doesn't like you hanging out with certain people, or they don't want you to spend time away from them. They don't care for you spending time with your family. They don't, every time you're on the phone, there's the grunts and the silent treatment afterwards. And if you feel like you're being penalized at any moment, before, after, or during spending time with people outside of the relationship, there's a red flag. You need to address that and figure out what's going on.
Great. Well, let's spend a little more time on your book.
Sure.
What was it like writing a book, rewriting the book? I was told when I was in school that great works aren't written, they're rewritten. So I'm sure you had to do a couple of rewrites.
Oh boy, so many times.
And then what's it like publishing? So let's start with the writing, then let's talk about the publishing part. How were you able to continue pushing yourself through the writing?
Oh boy. How? Oh boy. Let's see. You just have to keep it up. I mean, you just have to have faith that that what you're doing is what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, writing is isolating in itself. It's a mind game. In school, we're taught that you have to have these prolific sentences and be this wonderful literary god, or you have to be like Chaucer or Shakespeare or like these people who are supposed to be smart, or the canon, but yet we don't ever want to talk about Octavia Butler and her amazing catalog of books, or Toni McMillan, or Angie Thomas, who's just come and just, she's a force to be reckoned with, with her writing. Writing should be accessible. Books should be accessible. If you have 100,000 words and you're not making a story and you're not making any sense, you got to rethink that, because at the end of the day, you have to be accessible to people. And the way that we are taught literature, it makes English and it makes writing inaccessible because you think that you have to write a certain way instead of just telling a story, And I tell my kids all the time when they're like, Mom, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't write. I'm like, just tell a story. Just tell a story, tell your story the best way that you know how, and everything else will work out.
All right. Well, let's move to the publishing.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
Oh boy. Publishing was fun. After I took out the PTO.
That sounds loaded.
Yeah, okay. It sounds a little loaded. After I took out the PTO, I kind of spiraled into depression because, you have the whole thing. What if I'm not doing it right? What if I did the wrong thing? What if I made the wrong decision? Will my kids hate me? You know how your mind kind of spirals. And my daughter, she brought me my laptop one day and she's like, Mom, she's a teenager. She said, Mom, I need you to do something else. Go start writing or work on that book that you were working on. And I was like, okay, I'll just do it, whatever. And then I started pulling it out little by little and revising it some more. And in November of 2019, October 2019, before my divorce was finalized, I ended up sending it out to a literary agent. And November 2019, right after my divorce, which is kind of ironic, she reached out to me and she wanted to sign me. And it was really cool. And I heard from a few other agents, but I ultimately picked my agent right now that I have because she's like amazing. And we did a few more rounds of revisions, a few more rounds of edits. And we went out in, I think it was June or July. And within a week, we had a publisher. Actually, she sent my novel to my current publisher right now. And they read it over the weekend. And by Monday, they wanted to meet with me because they were so enamored with the book. And they had to have the book. So, yeah, I mean, we ended up going to auction with a few houses and ultimately Lake Union won. And it was amazing. I mean, it was amazing because what people don't know is I actually lost my job in May due to COVID. So
Wow.
in July, when I sold my book, I was like, oh, okay, single mom. Okay, we could eat. We're good. It was something I was worried about. I'm not going to lie. Because, you lose your job in May because of COVID. And it's like, okay, what are we going to do now? Yeah.
Well, so what are you going to do now? You have a book that is it a bestseller yet? It's on its way.
It is an Amazon bestseller. So fingers crossed that Wall Street and everyone else picks it up, But right now it is an Amazon bestseller, which is wonderful. And I'm so thrilled. And I'm so humbled and just grateful that people have picked up my words and they're reading it and it's resonating with readers. I think more importantly, that just, I can't even begin to describe how that feels. When I get a review or I get an email or I get a DM. This one lady was like DMing me throughout the day when she was reading it. And she's like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe it. I'm just reading like her play-by-play, like, okay, this is kind of cool. But ultimately she messaged me and she was like, this was my life, and to see it in words, made her cry. And it made me cry. I was like bawling from my laptop. My kids were like, Mom, you okay? I'm fine. Yeah, it was one of those things.
Well, that's interesting. That's similar to my wife's experience. So, we're sitting at home reading, both of our kids are in school right now. So, hot house to ourselves. And she's sitting there reading and I'm reading my book. And she's like, how can you be so stupid? I was like, what did I do now? She's like, no, she keeps allowing this to happen. She keeps getting caught and she keeps this. And I was like, oh, Lina in the book. Yeah. Okay, I haven't done anything wrong this time.
You're like, I'm good. Yeah.
But in the book, this main character doesn't seem to get it the first time. Doesn't seem to get it the second or third time. Is that normal? If somebody's in an abusive relationship, is it normal for them to take a while to remove themselves from it?
7 is the lucky number. A victim attempts to leave their abuser at least 7 times unsuccessfully. I mean, that's just a fact.
I had to let that marinate for a moment. Yeah. 7 times.
7 times. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're trying to leave your spouse or your partner because of abuse, it's normal to try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. And it's not failing. It's just building up the courage. So you're taking one more rung on that ladder, one more rung on the ladder, one more rung on the ladder until you're at the top. And then when you get to the top, that's freedom right there, But you have to take the steps. And you may not completely be successful at first, but you will be.
Well, the Get On Code show is all about empowerment. Our code is empowerment. And it looks to me like the writing of this book empowered you in a way like nothing else had before. Of course, I don't know your whole life, but
we don't have enough time for that.
To be able to leave a toxic relationship takes a lot of gumption, takes a lot of strength, takes a lot of faith. I guess it takes 7 tries in most cases. But the process of writing this book empowered you so much? The process of putting your thoughts to paper empowered you so much that you were able to change your situation. How important is the concept of empowerment to you now? You know, now that you've put yourself in a better situation, now that you have a Amazon best-selling book, you know, now that you realize you didn't need that job, you know, you know, how important is empowerment to you and to people who are trying to leave abusive situations?
At the end of the day, I think empowerment is using your voice and first discovering your voice, then using your voice. So I was able to discover my voice through my writing, through creating a world and creating characters that eventually paralleled my own life. I use my voice now as an advocate because I think that it's important that I not only pull myself out of a situation, but I'm able to pull other people out of situations and give them hope and shine light on a situation or shine light on a topic that all too often doesn't get talked about as much as it should be. But I think empowering yourself is finding that voice. And I think that it's important that domestic violence victims find their voice. Your voice has been taken away from you for so long, and through experiences that you cannot control. And little by little, you need to find your voice. You need to find that little piece of you that's still inside, that's screaming to be let out, and just allow that person to grow and allow that person to just be in the light. You know, like you have to allow yourself to find your voice.
As you wrote this book, and as you know, going through this process of publishing it and having this great level of success, have you looked back on maybe some of the generations and the people who raised you and found that they were in a similar situation as well?
Yeah. I found out that my grandmother, she was abused by my grandfather. I found out that my mother claims, my dad says a whole different thing, but my mother said that she was abused by my father. I have aunts who have experienced abuse. I have a sister who experienced horrible abuse. So yeah, I mean, I unfortunately, I think it's a generational thing. And I hope to be part of, this generation who's completely going to break the other generations. Like my daughter, she knows what a healthy relationship is. She will not accept anything less than that. And I'm so proud of her for that. My son, likewise, he knows what a healthy relationship looks like, and he refuses. I mean, he's put his foot down. He refuses to allow anything less. And he will not treat, his partners the way that he grew up, just because he went to therapy. We did the process, you know what I'm saying? But I think it's important that we break the cycle.
Wow. Well, then let's leave our viewers, our code keepers with something that's going to be positive. What are some idea markers of a healthy relationship and a healthy partner to have a relationship with?
Well, a healthy partner is someone who allows you to be you. A healthy relationship is a relationship that you can thrive and just be yourself in. You don't have to fit into anyone's box. You don't have to create yourself to be someone different. You can be you. You can be your beautiful, flawed, stink breath in the morning self, and you can love on yourself, and that person loves you because of that. I think that is just such a factor and such a good key that you really need to realize. Like, if you find yourself trying to dumb yourself down or pretend like you're something that you're not, or having to go into debt to impress somebody, or even lowering yourself to fit into their box. I'll actually read something, if you don't mind. This is my epigraph, and I got it from a really great friend. And it says this: Don't make yourself smaller and apologize for existing by saying, I don't know and I'm sorry, when you didn't do anything wrong. Trust what you know. Take up space. Be yourself. Step into your power and live your life. And that's by Dr. Yana Jameson. And I think that is probably the best definition I can say about what a healthy relationship is with yourself, what a healthy relationship is. Take up the space, allow yourself to take up space. Don't ever apologize if you're not wrong. If you're wrong, you better apologize. But if you're not wrong, don't just walk into a room and say, I'm sorry. There's no reason for you to do that. And Shonda Rhimes, I will add, she's been posting a lot recently about how if you find yourself in a room, you're supposed to be there. Act like you're supposed to be there. Enjoy being there because that's who you are. You are beautiful and wonderful in who you are. And I think that we need to understand that. And if you're in a healthy relationship, then your partner will definitely understand and appreciate you for who you are.
Great words. And that's a great way to end this great episode of Get On Code, where we focus on empowerment. Today, we had the great honor of hanging out with Robyn Lucas, the author of Paper Doll Lina. I have my copy. Follow my lead. Follow her lead. And her lead was, there was something that was challenging her, bothering her, disturbing her, Charlottesville. And she used that moment of challenge, difficulty, to reach into her talents. And her talents allowed her to see that there was some other things she needed to change. So, hey, code keepers, there's some things you need to change. Allow your talents to reveal them more fully, and allow your talents to help you execute a plan that will allow you to go to a better experience. You've been watching Get On Code with Robyn Lucas. Any last words, Robyn? Any last thoughts?
Don't let anyone turn you into a paper doll. And if you are a paper doll, get some help. Open your mouth, find your voice, and talk to somebody.
Beautiful. As you can see, you can go to robynlucas.com. That's robynlucas.com. You've been watching and sharing with Get On Code. Hey, get on code, teach the code, be a code keeper. This show was brought to you by Positive Vibes Incorporated, our consulting services. We do credit fixes. We do tax resolution. We lend private money and debt consolidation. So if you need some of these services, we're waiting here for you. Credit fixes, tax resolutions, private money, and debt consolidation. Make sure you call Positive Vibes Incorporated.